Hello, and welcome back to Gulotta Studios. Working here on the Mammoth Cave corridor, and today is the final bit. There's just one color that needs to be done. I brought the camera a little bit closer, gave it a slightly different angle so that you might see better how the work turns out. So, bit of an experiment in how things go. I'm not important. The painting's important. There we go. That's how it goes. So I'm going to be using some Old Holland yellow light, which is that beautiful bone white, and this makes a very nice highlight for the gypsum flowers that have grown on the walls here. So we're going to work on that. I've also got two of my smallest brushes. These guys are tiny little things, and they're both sables. One's a number 2, which is very small. The other one is a 00, which is crazy small. But that's what I need. I need very small brushes. Now, here's the real trick. I've got to work from the closest now to the furthest. So, and again, I'm not using any medium. And there's also going to be less detail back here because it's so far away. You're not going to see a lot of detail. You're going to see most of those details up close and personal here. So we have the light coming from this direction. So I'm going to keep that in mind while I bring in just the highlights. And again, I gotta continually dip the brush into the paint. It's very important. So this will probably not be a very long session, but it will be very rewarding. There we go. Getting to business here. We're finally getting this little bit done. And that'll be very nice. It's about time. Yeah. You know, working with these small brushes can be a challenge, because they require a lot of back and forth between just pulling this back in. And I just want to say to my subscribers, understand, I really deeply appreciate your continued viewership, and please feel free to share what you see here with anyone you know. I don't mind. You have my very public opinion, a very public agreement that please share. It's what we artists really like. We like our work to be seen because we're trying to express something here. It's not always for ourselves. You know, the media makes it seem like we're all attention hounds. I want to bring attention to the work. That's where I want the attention to be. Not necessarily on me, but on the creations, because I think they're actually more important than I am. There we go. So now we've got this little spot here, more firmly detailed. The nice thing is, going in this direction, because I'm left-handed, I can actually lean a little bit on the rest of the canvas here. And it's nice and dry. You always make sure that you've got a good dry surface before you do that. And we've had some warm and very dry days here, and that helps speed up the drying of the paint. Sometimes I don't want that. Sometimes I want the paint to take its time. Sometimes it loses some of its plasticity if it's quickly dried. It becomes brittle. And I really don't want my paintings to be brittle things. I want them to be resilient. And that requires flexibility. Yeah, I just got these little lines in white just to show the light catching the edges of these formations. There we go. And I'm still using my footnotes. They're there in the texture of the paint. So I'm using that texture as a marker for where the details need to go. That's important. That's always important. You want to know where these details have to be. Just using no medium at all. In some of my other works I do use medium. So I'm not like against medium. I've seen that online. I'm like, really? And I've seen people who are in love with medium. It's a tool. Nothing more. It's a tool. It's not a necessity. If you rely on mediums too much, you're going to have problems with your work. Because you're going to come to a point where you may not have that tool. And then what are you going to do? So, it's always good to know more than one way of working your paintings. Yeah, so catch the edge of this one. There. I like that. Because sometimes pieces of gypsum break off and they'll leave like a little crater there. That's darker than the rest. And just these little bits and pieces. And you can see that this is going very, very quickly. And that's because I already know what's happening here. Just catching the edge. Of these details. Just to show where that crystallization was coming through. So this is very exciting for me, finally being able to finish this piece. I got a few more to go before I can say I'm done with the series. And when I first started it, I thought maybe I had bitten off more than I could chew, but I think I can do it. It's just going to take the time it takes. That's all. And a lot of these gypsum flowers are actually curved. They were curly. Some of them were straight, but a lot of them were curled. Almost like coral. Very interesting stuff. Beautiful. Gray flowers. That's what they look like. Gray flowers emerging from the rock. Made for a wealth of things to paint, I'll tell you. I was on my Facebook page earlier. It was nice. I got to see some people I haven't heard from in a bit. That's always pleasant. in general, the people who interact on my live feed are very nice people. I guess I'm lucky. I've heard horror stories. And I've had, there's always going to be someone who doesn't like me or what I'm doing for whatever reason. But I got used to dealing with critics who didn't like me or my work, so I don't know. Everyone else kind of seems like an amateur compared to some of those guys. Not all of them. I mean, some critics are nice. Some of them actually care about the state of the arts. I've had some very interesting conversations. They get a bad rep for critiquing work, but critiquing is important. There's just so many of them take a bit of an easier path and don't actually make helpful suggestions. That's part of the critiquing process. How can the artist improve? How can they move forward? I think just many critics don't know what they're looking at sometimes, and so it's hard for them to say, well, if you did this, it might really show better, you might get more of an emotional impact. But that's hard to do if what you're looking at is too strange to understand. But then there has to be the recognition that it's no one's fault. This is just what the artist has chosen to paint. And, well, that's what they chose to paint. If an artist chooses something to paint that's difficult to understand or difficult to make a proper critique of, that happens. It's happened in art for a very, very long time. There we go. Just want to get these little tiny details in here. And I will pan in once I've gotten all these little bits in, so you can see the results. Attach that one there. There we go. That's much better. And again, you can't go too crazy. I mean, there's some areas where there's like a lot of clusters here. Yeah, go crazy. Have fun with that. I see one spot that needs a little help here. Hang on a sec. There we go, much better. But you can go a little nuts with detail to the point where it doesn't really help the work. And that really is the key. If it helps the work, do it. If it doesn't help the work, avoid it. Don't get caught into thinking of painting in one way. It's not going to work out too well. Just put in there what you need. That's really the simplest way of looking at it. Just put in the things that you need. If you don't need it, don't put it in. There we go. I'm going to actually do this spot up here. Bring that a little more into focus. And here we're going to have the highest focus it's going to have. That highest focus is, of course, dependent upon the brushes. And I'm not doing hyper-realism here, so I'm not really concerned with it looking like a photograph. I'm not going to get there. I don't want to do that. What I want is for this to at least have some focus. And that's really all. That's all it needs. There. And now we're just getting in these little parts here. They're kind of stuck out, like they were thinking of making some flowers. Maybe some of them did and they fell off, or they're just starting. It'll take another 10,000 years to get them going again. I'm also thinking about the shape of the rock, how it curves inward. There we go. There we go. Yeah, even with details, I'm doing finger paint. There. Now I've got this area here. It's coming out of the dark. Just bring in a little bit. You know, when this painting first started, it seemed like it was going to be a bit of a dark painting, but it's not. It's actually quite bright, which I'm enjoying because the gypsum crystals are also very bright. So you want the work to be able to reflect what it is that you're painting. Now when I get to this area, I'm going to switch brushes. There. See, with all the other notes there, you know, people think the details take forever. Actually, they don't. And that's only because you've already got everything mapped out. You know where everything goes now. It's very obvious. So you just put in your little bit of highlight. You know, if you need to augment a shadow, do it. But at this point in the game, everything is in its place. So it's just a matter of bringing it into focus. And that can go very quickly. You see here I've got some texture which showed that there was a little bit of formation going in this direction. So I'm going to capture that. This area I'm not going to worry about too much. There may be some details there, but it may not be a lot. It's not the focus of the work, and that's the other thing to keep in mind too with your details is, are your details showing what the work is about, or are you just kind of getting lost in your own mind? And you have to be careful about that. It's very easy to get lost. Then your painting gets lost. You can't really blame the painting now. The painting is just a reflection of the skill of the artist and their intentions. And just a little bit across there. Looks like I might need a little bit there. Not much. Just a little bit to bring across there. Good. All right. So let's switch brushes. Okay, this one's got a bit of a longer tip. And we're going to continue on to the next piece of wall. That's going to be right here. I'm actually going to start up here. And I always have the right to go back to the other brush if this one isn't serving me well. That seems to be doing a pretty good job. It's giving me a nice fine detail, just a touch softer than the parts that are closest to the viewer, which is what I want. I want everything closest to the viewer to really be sharp. this gives the illusion of distance. Unless you happen to have eagle eyes, in which case, well. That's a different story. Though it might be interesting to see paintings which are blurred when up close and sharp in the distance. You don't see a lot of that sort of thing in art. Not sure why. Certainly can't be because every artist is nearsighted. I've known artists who were farsighted. So I know it's not that. Bring this little guy in. There we go. Just add a little brightness to these lines. Give the viewer the idea of where the shapes are, what's happening in here. I had someone who saw this who thought it was done already. And as tempting as that was, it wasn't done to me. And that's important too. Always keep your integrity about your work. If it's not done to you, well, it's not done. There we go. I'm going to bring in these crystals here, just to, you know, these crystals are not necessarily straight. Some of them are globby. Some of them look like curls. So they had a lot of different shapes to them, depending on how they were growing out of the rock. Again, I'm using my little footnotes to guide me into proper placement. There we go. And then this will be much better focused. Much better focused. This kind of work does take its time, but this is going a lot faster. And that tells me that my notes were really helping. And that this one is indeed just about done. Which makes me very happy. I can move on to the next one. That's always nice too. Get a little ridge there. Right on the corner of that rock. These I got to be kind of careful with because they're a little shadowy. I don't want to bring them out too much. Yeah. Dampen that one down a little. Nice thing to use finger fours just to dampen something a little bit. Might be a little too harsh. Bring in these lovely curves. Splay the brush just a little bit. There. There we go. Again, I'd like to thank Mammoth Caves National Park for allowing me to go into the cave to do this. They were wonderful hosts. We had a wonderful time, met some very nice people. And they do a very good job there. They're very impressive. Very, very impressive. I hope they someday get to see this, and if they do, I hope that they feel that I've at least captured the spirit of the caves, if nothing else. Like I said, none of these can be as accurate as a photograph. But it does give a bit of a human response story. I think that's just as important. There we go. That little detail in. All right. I want to curve that a little. There we go. That's better. All right. That in. So now I'm going to go upwards. Let's start with this little piece here. Now I'm going to bring in some details right here. There. May as well get this too. And this one looks like a lot of them broke off. We got a lot of flatter areas. Got a little brightness here. Maybe there was some gypsum on this at one time, and now it's kind of smoothed off and broken off over time. The floor I'm going to keep as it is. No reason for that. The floor was actually fairly smooth, if a little pebbly. And rippled. You always gotta focus on what's the hero of this story. And for me, it's the walls. Bring in this paint. It's always interesting bringing in details in a thick paint without the use of any medium. That's always an interesting process. Now I got very little on my brush here, but I have these plainer stones. I'm just going to bring that in nice and quick. Okay, because they don't have any gypsum on them. That's all over here. Bring in this little cluster. And there's always room for improvement. You know, it's the other thing you got to get used to in being an artist. You're never going to look at your work the way anyone else does. You know, you hear people, wow, it's amazing. And you're like, I don't know, I think I messed up. It happens all the time. You know, you don't know what everyone's excited about. You can't see it. All you see are those terrible mistakes you made. And, you didn't do that right, and that spot looks a little flat. It's really all you're gonna see. Had a friend of mine who left the arts for that reason. He just couldn't deal with the idea that everything he made he didn't like. He was embarrassed to show any of it. So we left it behind. And that has nothing to do with the art world or unfair treatment or, you know, some critic being mean. That was his own critic. Drove him to that. me, I can't imagine not painting and drawing. So for me, it's something I just do because, well, that's what Dave Gulotta does. He paints and draws. Everything else is a maybe. Everything else is of the moment. This is what I've been doing all my life. And I'm going to keep doing it. Whether it's popular or not. Whether it's money making or not. That doesn't matter. I'll always be doing this. Gave up on it once for a little while, and that drove me crazy. I couldn't even function. I was in a bad state. That was a hard time in my life. When I got out of that, I said, you know, never again. So even if I'm doing something else, I'm doing this. There we go. You can see how it brightened up a little bit with these details. Oh, I got some real nice ones here. There. I'll go back to that one a little bit. There we go. Just a touch, just a hint. There's something else going on there. All right, now I want to get that little section here. Just detail the highlights a little. And here you can see there's a rough area here, and that means gypsum flowers. And that's the thing, you got to build like a little personal code. And these things stuck to the walls, the ceilings. Sometimes just as a smear of light, and sometimes very, very strongly. There we go. There, just like that. Good. Just like that. There. Now, just want to finish that little spot here. Just a little bit. There. Like light on rough stone. All right. Now, I've got this spot, and this spot I have to be careful with because it's already very bright. So it's more that I just want to get these little edgings in. And make sure of my shapes. And where things are supposed to be bright. Little fringy bits here, which is good. I like being fringe. There. Bad joke of the day. Alright. I just want to continue this to its logical conclusion. There. And I'm going to work up here a little bit. Get these details in. Just pulling them down. A good amount of paint on this tiny little brush. I'm just pulling things down. books tell me they need to be. That's the important thing. One of the dangers of using footnotes like that is that you can be a better drawer and painter than you were. And sometimes those footnotes might look a little crude. Then you've either got to guess or use photographic means and all of that. But I knew these were crude. I designed them to be crude, so I wouldn't have that problem later, but that took some practice. I had to practice regular landscapes with this method before bringing on a challenge such as this. You know, a bunch of studies and whatnot, just to make sure that this would work out well. Because I knew there was no way for me to paint all this in a week. And that's the time I had. I had a week to get my impressions in, and then all the time in the world, really, to finish them up. But I'm ready to finish these up. I want to finish them up. I need the room. I need to get these out of my studio and onto walls somewhere. Right now my studio has other projects that I'm working on. I would like to see this finally finished. So that's why I'm working on them like crazy these days. And now it's getting a little more misty here with these little details. It has to be, because it's that much further distant. So I got to be kind of careful. You know, like I said, this is the spot where I've got to be the most careful. And then we'll see. We'll see where I need some help and some good details. There we go. Now I'm going to pull this in. Get these little tiny details, and they can't be as apparent as these. They're further away. So they're not going to have all these broad strokes. It's a little tiny one. That's why I picked this brush, because the tip of it is very flexible. I just need to get in some small details and not all these very big apparent crystals here. Still very similar to the frost that you see in a freezer or something, although there's no water involved here. Not at this stage. That cave was dry here. Here it's the frost of gypsum. You know, because frost is the crystallization of water. That's really all it is. It's what ice is. It's water crystal. This is gypsum crystal. It's going to have its own texture, but it's interesting how similar it can be to water. There we go. So now I'm going to pull this in, and again I'm going to come up here very carefully, just on the very edges here, start getting this set up. Very, very lightly. I don't want to get into a lot of detail here, but I want to accent what's there, just so it makes more sense. There, that's better. All right, I got this This little spot here to work on. And then finally up in here. And I'm gonna just be very, very light. I'm just gonna bring in some edgings here. I don't want too much. Instead of thinking of each individual crystal, I'm thinking of each mass of crystals as a separate object that has to have a certain shape and a certain shadowing. Otherwise, it's going to look too different. It's not going to have any perspective to it. It won't look like it belongs. So here's where I'm working on getting this detail finished. Very small details. There we go. Very small. Just a little bit. Just enough to bring some interest into what's happening with the rock here. Just to bring that in. There we go. That's better. All right. And here we are on this one. And this one's going to be even less. Just a hint here and there. Each step of the way. Just a little hint of what's going on with these stones. I don't want to get too crazy. I keep reminding myself that, it's something I like to do. I like to remind myself while I'm painting, Dave, don't go too crazy. There are some paintings where you can go kind of crazy, and this is not one of them. Yeah, so I want to make this a little brighter. And again, I'm not as concerned with minute details because this is further in the distance. This is why you talk to yourself when you're painting. You got to remind yourself of your craft. There's a lot of rules involved. There's a lot of technique and thinking that has to happen. And sometimes if things are too quiet, that can be difficult. That's why I like to teach. I get to do a lot of good painting while I'm teaching. Sounds a little selfish of me, but it's true. It's true. My students don't seem to mind, though. They like being here while I'm painting, seeing how this is done. There's a little bit of line here. There we go. Just a touch. Just a touch of. There. Bring that in. And now I'm on to my last detail. This is it, folks. This is it. This is where the painting is finished. And again, like the last one, just a touch, just a touch of detail up in here, just to show what's happening with the stone. Nothing more. Touch of brightness here and there. Don't need a lot. Not at this stage. Not at this distance. What I do want is to get this lighting appropriate. There we go. Much better. You do little corrections wherever you need to. Don't leave them be. Don't leave those corrections alone. It's not a good idea. You want to make them before you sign anything. Signed painting should be a finished painting. If you're going back to your signed paintings and making corrections, that means they were not done. Just a little bit with the finger there. One of the most useful of painting tools is the finger. Although I am cautious with that when it comes to the more dangerous pigments like lead, though I still use that. Nothing replaces it, but this is not lead. Doesn't contain any. If you're going to do serious painting and work with serious pigments, you should know that you shouldn't be eating or drinking anything in the studio. If you have a cut on your hands, you wear a glove or something, because you don't want to get any of this in your bloodstream. You don't eat paint. You know, common sense stuff. You know, that's really all it is common sense stuff. Let's get a little bit more in there. Good. Caught on that. There we go. Good. All right. We got a little more color here. Almost there. Just check everything. Make sure everything is looking as it should. Not gotta put anything in there. And you do that now. Just with what's left over on your brush. All right, and I think, my dear ladies and gentlemen, that finishes this piece. All right, so now we get to sign it. For that, I'm going to use this thin brush here, and now I am going to use a little bit of medium just to loosen it up a touch. I'm going to keep with the white, but I'm going to sign it over here. Move my little brush holder here, and there we go. A little bit. Gulotta. Cross the T's. Put in the date. And there it is. All finished. Now, as promised, I'm gonna see about bringing this in. So you can see all those details. They're frosted in there. Okay? There it is. All right. Well, I hope that you have enjoyed this video here on YouTube, here at Gulotta Studios, the finishing of the Mammoth Caves corridor. I'll be doing another piece next week. We'll be starting with something different, something new, maybe something more colorful. So I hope to see you then, and until next week, happy painting, everyone. Take care.